Hello and welcome to the Craft Witch Corner, where I yap and craft. My name is Dex and my pronouns are he, they. Today's video is questions to ask before you cast. So, I need some fidgets. Okay. I swear this happens every single video. I completely forget to grab one before I start and then I'm like, meh. There are 4 questions that I've come up with for myself to kind of figure out when I am wanting to cast a spell about a situation, if this spell is actually going to help, or if there's another thing going on where addressing that thing would be more effective and ultimately lead to more success. Here are the 4 questions to ask before casting a spell. What is the current problem? What is the biggest part of this problem? What is the root of that issue? And how can we address this with a spell? Let's get into it. Number 1, what is the current problem? For example, you could be feeling really stressed about finances. A lot of us are really feeling the financial stress right now. Things are not going super great. So that is just a very common issue. Let's use that as an example. Number 2, what is the biggest part of this problem? Now, yes, we can look at the parts that are much further outside of our control, like government bullshit happening. However, I think for me, the way that I approach spellcraft, I think it's generally more effective, and I may say something later on that will contradict what I'm saying now, but that's okay. I generally think it's more effective to address what's going on within yourself and what is within your control before, or just in general. I just think for me it works a lot better. You might be a different practitioner with a different set of skills, and you might be better at manipulating outside situations. For me, I'm much better at casting to help me change what I'm doing and to create change within myself. So those are the examples I'm going to use mostly. So for number 2, what is the biggest part of this problem? If you don't have a job, that will be a big stress on your finances, obviously. And also if you have poor spending habits or impulsive spending habits. Moving on to number 3, what is the root of that issue? So for the no job side of things, you maybe are struggling to hold a job because you're neurodivergent and you're severely burnt out, or you have other mental health issues, maybe you're agoraphobic, something of that nature. For the impulsive spending side of things, maybe it's something where when you're really stressed out, you do some impulsive spending because it gives you that dopamine that in that moment makes you feel a little bit better. Number 4, how can we address this with a spell? So we're going to look at the 2 different sides. Now with jobs, what is the thing that is causing you to not be able to hold the job? If it's related to your mental health, we're going to do some spells that target the mental health. Let's say you have agoraphobia, like myself, which is the reason I have a very hard time holding a job. What we're going to do for this is some kind of spell that slowly helps us work on getting outside of the house. I am currently doing some exposure therapy stuff with alongside therapy and psychiatry. I'm on medication. For me, mental health in therapy and in my practice go hand in hand 100% of the time. Typically, the spells that I'm doing for my mental health help me get further in therapy. So I have a pair of emotional healing socks that just help me tap into that emotional healing, help me feel safe to address issues I'm dealing with. I did a spell bag for my agoraphobia to help me get the fuck outside. I did that spell during my month with Fehu, if you're interested. But we're gonna do some kind of spell to help us get outside and preferably be in therapy and working on some medication if possible. I believe when it comes to mental health, addressing one thing is not gonna be very effective. In my personal experience, just being in therapy or just being on medication or just doing witchy things, none of these provided much results. But now that I'm in a place where I am using all 3 together and it's working much more cohesively, I have found much more success in getting my mental health into a much better place. So that is my recommendation. Take it with a grain of salt. For other issues, for anxiety, we're gonna look into what are the things that make you anxious? what is giving you panic attacks or anxiety attacks, and what can we do to address that? We're just gonna keep asking questions until we get to something actionable. So these 4 questions are not the be all end all. These are just the starting point. And then you're just gonna keep going and asking these questions until you find a place where you're like, okay, so this is really the root and this is what I'm going to address. Okay, so anxiety, right? I personally have a lot of anxiety about being around people. I am terrified of people. So doing spells that help me feel safe when I'm outside, that's great. However, if I'm not actually addressing the problem of my fear of people, whenever I'm outside, I'm going to be anxious as fuck, which is going to make it hard to stick with that and hard to get that spell to continue actually working. I personally did my spell to get me outside, and then during my month with Uruz, again, you can find an explanation of this in the video about my month with Uruz, but during that month, I did a spell to bring forth my inner strength, and I focused heavily in visualization on not only getting outside, but feeling safe, watching people walk by me and not feeling anxious, being able to just be relaxed and comfortable and be friendly, and it's not like making my heart start to beat really fast or making my body tense. That's where it comes down to. We need to address the root of the issue, and that will actually be able to help you create more sustainable change. Now, on the side of impulsive spending, with the cause being stress, I need dopamine, I spend money, it makes me feel better for a second. We are going to need to address the stress. What are the things that are making you the most stressed? So for example, maybe you do have a job, but you have coworkers or a coworker who make you feel legitimately unsafe, or the environment is hostile, and you've tried to get that addressed and it's not being addressed. Let's do a banishment on this person or these people. Let's do a banishment. This is where it comes in of like a little bit contradictory, but I do think that when it comes to feelings of being unsafe or things like that, doing good banishing on someone can be effective. I have only done like a cutting ties banishment thing once, and it was very intense. I don't typically pull out the banishing big guns, but I do think that there is absolutely a time and a place where that is an important step to do. So that could be something, or is it just that you feel stressed being around people, particularly as a neurodivergent person, and most neurodivergent people that I know just in general feel uncomfortable around other people because there's this feeling of needing to mask and not understanding social cues, yada yada. So there's a few different things we can do. You could do a spell like I mentioned with my Uruz inner strength spell to pull forward your inner strength and just help you be able to withstand the discomfort a little bit more and just feel more at ease and feel stronger and more capable of being in these situations. We can also work on veiling. Veiling is really great. It's not for everyone, and that's totally okay. I want to mention, you do not have to have some kind of scarf or hat or something like that to veil. We could also try making a veiling oil or a veiling spray that you could just spray over your head or rub into your hair. But if we have sensory issues with oil, which I do know a lot of neurodivergents that have a problem with oils, so instead of doing that, I think a spray could be really effective. We're just gonna work with some protective herbs, some calming herbs. We could do one or multiple, whatever feels right. And we can also do a protective shield every time that you're going to go outside or be around people or go to work. This could also help with some of that discomfort and anxiety and stress that is involved with being around others. It gives you just a little bit of a buffer from their energy, especially if you're highly empathetic or really take on other people's energies, which I myself do. I think doing this is highly effective and very helpful. The other thing we can do is some spells to target de-stressing after stressful events. That could be like a blanket spell or something with some socks or just a comfort item that you have, a stuffed animal, and we can just do a spell with that item, with that piece of clothing, to infuse it with some really de-stressifying, really peaceful, calming, I think of lavender kind of vibes every time that something really stressful goes on and you have that urge to like, I want to go impulse spend. Put on the socks, grab the stuffed animal, grab the blanket, whatever it is. I really like the use of affirmations, so It could be something about like, I am at peace, I am comfortable, I am relaxed, the stress leaves my body with every breath, something like that, until you're at that point where you don't feel the need to impulse spend anymore. That is something we could do. A banishing or cutting ties with that reckless spending that you have. So it's kind of like a self-banish in a way. We're banishing a trait that is causing us harm. There's so many ways you can do a cut ties or banishing, so we're just gonna pick whatever makes sense, whatever feels right. Or a self-binding freezer spell. I know a lot of people who really like the self-binding freezer spells for, again, targeting that trait that is causing harm within ourselves to help us stop. The key with something like that is you don't just leave it at that, because a binding only lasts so long. When you do that, we want to figure out what else we can do to work on this problem. So I think a really great way to do it would be self-binding freezer spell, and then address the stress, and then address the de-stressing. I think it's important to note that there are some situations that are much more complicated that do have multiple roots, and that will require us to address multiple roots in order to really come to like a conclusion or a solution. That's okay. That's okay. If an issue has one root, great. If an issue has multiple roots, great. That's totally fine. I just personally think, and what I have experienced from my own life and talked about in therapy and psychiatry, is not just in a magical sense, obviously, but in a... I dropped my fidget toy. I can't reach it. Okay, well, I don't like that one. Anyways, when we address the root of the issue, it is significantly more effective than just like constantly addressing the overwhelming symptoms that arise from it. That is like a never-ending work. Whereas when we actually address what's going on at the root of it, some of that other stuff isn't going to be a problem. So yeah, of course, you're feeling stressed about finances. You could just do a money bowl to bring in more money. But if you don't have like a sustainable long-term income, getting more money right now is not really going to help you in the long run. If you have poor spending habits, getting more money just means more money for you to spend. So it's not really going to be effective. Whereas we look at the problem, we look at the root of it, and we figure out what we can do. Okay, so we're eliminating the stress, learning how to deal with it, learning how to de-stress in healthy ways rather than impulse spending. And now we can do a money bowl spell if we are still feeling stressed about finances, because at this point, we're not going to be leaking the money right back out. We're actually in a place where the money that's coming in is going to be helpful rather than continue to be a part of a problem. So there you go, there you have it. I definitely don't think this is the be-all end-all of how to decide what spell to do or kind of keep yourself, I don't want to say in check, but like kind of in check when it comes to spell work. But I think it is a helpful place to start to kind of think critically about how we're going about spell work. Me personally, I'm not somebody who goes to spells super often for every single problem that comes in my life. I know people who do that. I don't think there's anything wrong with it. However, for me, I don't really have the energy for that. I don't really have the resources or the time for that. And I know many people who do not. I would like to make sure that the spell work that I'm doing is actually like packing a punch. It's actually going to be effective and it's not going to be a waste of my time. I don't want to bring in more money for that money to just be leaking back out, right? So addressing the actual issue, that's just going to be more effective and a better use of your time and a better use of your energy, in my opinion. Of course, take it with a grain of salt. You are allowed to have your own opinions. At the very least, I hope that this has inspired you to maybe come up with your own questions for yourself of how you can decide what kind of spell to do or if a spell is the right choice. I really hope that you enjoyed this video. I know it's definitely shorter than the usual videos that I do. I may honestly make more videos like this in the future if I come to more realizations with myself about how to make these choices and how to be the most effective in spell work as possible. It's definitely some of the chaos paradigm coming in. I hope that you enjoyed this video, and if you did, I would love to hear from you in the comments. Please give the video a like, comment, and subscribe if you would like to hear or see more from me. I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day. Stay crafty and stay kind.